The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town of Redemption Valley, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. It was the kind of heat that made men seek shelter in saloons and women pull their shawls tighter despite the temperature. But for James Crawford, a weathered cowboy with eyes that had seen too much violence, the heat was the least of his concerns as he rode into town that scorching afternoon in the summer of 1887. James had been a gunslinger once, a man feared across 3 territories for his quick draw and quicker temper. But that was before the incident in Tombstone, before he had killed a man in what he thought was self-defense, only to discover later that the man had been reaching for a letter, not a gun. The guilt had eaten away at him for 2 years, turning him from a feared outlaw into a wandering soul seeking some form of redemption that always seemed just out of reach. He had heard about Redemption Valley from a preacher in Santa Fe, who told him it was a place where broken people went to start over. The town had been founded by former outlaws, gamblers, and those running from their past, all trying to build something honest from the ruins of their former lives. James figured if there was any place on God's earth where he might find peace, it would be there. As he tied his horse to the post outside the general store, he noticed the townspeople giving him cautious glances. His reputation hadn't preceded him here, but the way he wore his gun and the hardness in his eyes told them everything they needed to know. He was trouble, or at least he had been. The storekeeper, an elderly man with kind eyes and silver hair, greeted him warmly enough. "New in town, stranger?" "Just passing through," James replied, though even as he said it, he wondered if that was true. "Need some supplies and maybe a place to rest for the night. We've got a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Henderson keeps a clean establishment. As for supplies, you've come to the right place." The old man began gathering items as James listed them off. "You know," he said conversationally, "we don't get many newcomers here. Most folks who find Redemption Valley are looking for something." "And what makes you think I'm looking for anything?" The storekeeper smiled gently. "Because nobody ends up here by accident, son. This town has a way of calling to those who need it most." James paid for his supplies and was about to leave when he heard a commotion outside. A group of men had gathered near the old mission church at the edge of town, their voices raised in anger and disgust. Against his better judgment, James found himself drawn to the scene. "Get out of here," one man was shouting. "We don't want your kind in our town." "Please," a woman's voice replied, weak and desperate. "I just need some water. I'll leave, I promise, but please, just some water." James pushed through the crowd and saw her then, huddled against the wall of the church. She was wrapped in tattered robes and a headscarf that covered most of her face, leaving only her eyes visible. But it was those eyes that stopped him cold. They held a depth of suffering that mirrored his own, a pain so profound that it seemed to radiate from her very soul. "What's going on here?" James demanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had commanded fear in his former life. "Ain't none of your concern, stranger," one of the men spat. "This woman's got the sickness. We're just protecting our town." "Leprosy," another man added, taking a step back as if the very word could infect him. "She needs to go to the colony up north. Can't have her spreading it here." James looked at the woman again. She had pulled her scarf tighter around her face, her hands trembling. "Please," she whispered again, "don't look at my face. I know what I am. I know what I look like. I just need water, and then I'll go. I won't trouble anyone." Something in her voice broke through the walls James had built around his heart. Here was someone even more ostracized than he was, someone whose sins weren't of her own making but of cruel fate. He turned to the crowd. "All of you go home. Now. Who do you think you are?" one man challenged. James's hand moved instinctively to his gun, not drawing it, but the gesture was clear enough. The crowd began to disperse, muttering curses and warnings, but they went. Soon, only James and the woman remained. He knelt down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Ma'am, I'm going to get you some water. Don't move." "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what I am." "I know you're a person who's thirsty," James replied simply. "That's enough." He retrieved his canteen and brought it back to her, setting it down within her reach rather than handing it to her directly, sensing she wouldn't want to risk any contact. She drank gratefully, her hands shaking so badly that water spilled down her chin. "Thank you," she said when she had finished. "You should go now. You shouldn't be near me." "Where were you headed?" James asked, ignoring her warning. "To the colony in the northern mountains. It's a 3-day journey on foot." I had a mule, but it died 2 days ago. I've been walking since then." "You'll never make it on foot," James said, thinking of the harsh terrain between here and the mountains. "Not without supplies, and certainly not in your condition." "I don't have a choice," she replied, and he heard the resignation in her voice. "I can't stay here. I can't stay anywhere where there are people. This is my fate." James stood up and looked down at her, his mind racing. Every practical part of him said to walk away, to leave her to her journey and continue on his own path. But something deeper, something he thought had died with his conscience years ago, wouldn't let him leave her. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Sarah Mitchell. At least, that was my name before. Now I'm just the leper woman, the cursed one." "Sarah," James repeated, committing it to memory. "My name's James. And I'm going to help you get to that colony." "No," she said sharply, trying to stand up but too weak to manage it. "You can't. You'll get sick. You'll become like me. Please, just go. Forget you ever saw me. I've done a lot of things I regret in my life, ma'am, but walking away from someone in need won't be one of them. Not anymore." For the next hour, James made preparations. He bought additional supplies from the general store, ignoring the storekeeper's concerned questions. He loaded everything onto his horse and returned to the mission where Sarah still sat, as if she had nowhere else to go because she didn't. "Can you ride?" he asked. I used to. But I can't share a horse with you. The risk." "You'll ride," James said firmly. "I'll walk alongside. We'll make camp well before dark. Keep a safe distance between us. But we're not leaving you here, and you're not walking to those mountains alone." "Why?" Sarah asked, and this time her voice cracked with emotion. "Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me." James was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Because I've been running from who I was for 2 years now. Maybe helping you is a way of helping myself. Maybe it's just the right thing to do. Does it matter?" They set out that afternoon, James walking alongside his horse while Sarah rode. She kept her face covered, her body hunched as if trying to make herself as small as possible. They didn't talk much that first day, both lost in their own thoughts. That night, James made camp near a small stream. He set up 2 separate areas, one for himself and one for Sarah, with a good 20 feet between them. He cooked beans and hardtack over the fire, then brought a plate to her, setting it down at a distance. "You should eat," he said. "It's going to be a long journey." "James," she said softly, and it was the first time she had used his name. "Before we go any further, there's something you should know. Something you should see." "You don't have to show me anything," he replied. "Yes, I do. Because if we're going to travel together for 3 days, you need to understand what you're risking. You need to see." Her voice broke. "You need to see the monster I've become."
"Sarah, you're not a monster."
"Please," she begged, tears evident in her voice now.
"Please don't look at my face."
"But I need you to know what's under this scarf. I need you to understand why everyone turns away, why my own family abandoned me, why I'm condemned to live in isolation for whatever time I have left." James sat down by his own fire, giving her space. "Tell me your story then, if you want to."
"I'll listen."
And so, in the flickering firelight, Sarah told him everything. She had been a schoolteacher in a small town in Colorado, engaged to be married to a banker's son. She had a good life, a happy life, until the spots appeared on her skin. At first, she had hidden them, terrified of what they might mean. But the disease progressed quickly. Within months, her face had begun to change, the lesions spreading despite every treatment the doctors attempted. Her fiancé had broken their engagement immediately. Her family had sent her away, fearful for their own health and reputation. She had wandered from town to town, always hidden beneath scarves and robes, always rejected, always alone. The law required that she go to a leper colony, but the journey was long and dangerous, and no one would help her. "I've forgotten what it's like," she said quietly, "to be seen as human, to be treated with kindness. For 2 years, I've been nothing but a disease, a curse, something to be feared and avoided."
Sometime si wonder if even exist anymore, or if I'm just a walking nightmare.
James listened to it all, his heart breaking for this woman who had done nothing to deserve her fate. When she finished, he spoke carefully. "Sarah, I was a gunslinger.
I killed men for money.
I shot a man in Tombstone who was just reaching for a letter to his family. I've spent 2 years carrying that guilt, wondering if I can ever be redeemed for the things I've done."
You've done nothing wrong. Life just dealt you a cruel end.
"But at least your sins were your own," she replied. "At least you had choices. I didn't choose this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. And yet here I am, worse than a criminal, because at least criminals can serve their time and be forgiven."
He'll never be forgiven. He'll never be whole again.
They sat in silence for a long while, the fire crackling between them. Finally, James spoke. "I don't need to see your face, Sarah. I see your humanity, and that's enough." But Sarah slowly reached up and began to unwrap her headscarf. "Please don't look at my face," she whispered one last time, even as she revealed it. James, against every warning, against her own pleas, turned to look. Her face was ravaged by the disease. Lesions covered her skin, her features distorted and scarred. By society's standards, by any conventional measure, she was disfigured. But as James looked at her, Sarah stared at him in disbelief, her hands moving instinctively to cover her face again.
"You're mocking me."
"No," James said firmly, wiping his eyes.
"I'm telling you the truth.
I've seen beautiful women in saloons and dance halls, painted and perfumed and shallow as puddles. But you're beautiful in a way that matters. In a way that's real." For the first time in 2 years, Sarah Mitchell allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely lost. And for the first time in 2 years, James Crawford understood what redemption might actually look like. They continued their journey over the next 2 days, and slowly, the distance between their camps grew smaller. They talked more, sharing stories of their pasts, their regrets, their small hopes for the future. Sarah kept her face uncovered now, no longer hiding from the one person who had chosen to see her as she truly was. When they finally reached the colony in the mountains, James helped Sarah get settled. But as he prepared to leave, she stopped him. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me, for reminding me that I'm still human." James nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He had come to Redemption Valley seeking peace, and he had found something better. He had found purpose. He had found, in the most unlikely place, a reason to believe that broken things could still have value, that damaged souls could still shine with grace. As he rode away from the colony, James Crawford knew he would return. Not because he pitied Sarah, but because she had given him something precious. She had shown him that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing every day to see the humanity in others and in yourself, no matter how scarred or damaged it might appear. The woman who had begged him not to look at her face had, by revealing it, helped him finally see his own.